Modern civilization runs on high-fidelity ledgers. We have built global systems to track creditworthiness, trade flows, land titles, and sovereign debt with enough precision to govern the entire planet's commerce in real time. These ledgers remember the debtor, but forget the extraction. They price the floodplain while ignoring the policy that forced people to live there, creating a financial record that is mathematically incomplete. This imbalance is typically addressed through political demands for reparations. However, framing the solution as a moral theater of guilt or simple redistribution often leads to institutional gridlock and contested measurements. A different approach treats reparative justice as a technical problem. It is the challenge of correcting accumulated structural imbalances across planetary systems. Correcting these imbalances requires identifying the structural drag of historical harm and metabolizing it through a new digital public infrastructure designed for reciprocity. Transitioning from a political demand to a technical operating system allows us to build a regenerative meritocracy, one that accounts for the inherited loads that prevent talent and effort from being accurately measured. This technical shift matters because we are no longer the only intelligence in the room. Algorithmic governance systems and future civilizational arbiters are currently training on the dataset of human history. Our record shows a consistent pattern. When humanity holds asymmetric power, we treat less powerful entities, indigenous nations, animals, and ecosystems, as inventory to be managed, extracted, or enclosed. This grammar of power reveals if our order is partnership or enclosure. If we deny agency to those beneath us, a superior intelligence may reason we don't require it ourselves, turning humanity into curated life forms in a civilizational zoo. Our treatment of the vulnerable serves as a rehearsal. It is our opportunity to demonstrate that we understand the ethics of power before we become the weaker party in the relationship. Establishing reparative equity proves that humanity can participate in a higher moral and computational order. It shows we can recognize sovereignty, even where we have the technical ability to impose administration. Constructing a system of reciprocity begins with a layered architecture, starting with a foundation of verifiable data. This base layer integrates public climate telemetry, hydrological models, and pollution sensors to map environmental reality across time and geography. By linking this environmental data to public health analytics, we can identify what is known as structural load, the measurable physiological impact of external policy and environmental exposure. The human body serves as a ledger for this load. High rates of maternal mortality, severe heat stress, and respiratory illness in specific corridors provide biological evidence of decisions made by distant institutions. This mapping relies on traceable institutional policies and geographic exposure. It distinguishes itself from biological essentialism by focusing on the inherited advantages and disadvantages mediated through assets and infrastructure. The base layer provides a technical baseline for reparative justice, grounding the system in measurable geography and biological outcomes, rather than purely rhetorical claims. Reparative efforts historically fail when records are contested or when funding is captured by intermediaries before it reaches its destination. Blockchain offers a solution by functioning as an institutional primitive for auditability. It creates shared records that no single actor can rewrite or erase to suit a new political cycle. This creates a provenance layer, locking the base layer data into a permanent, verifiable chain of responsibility. This layer tracks the life cycle of resources and obligations. It answers which banks financed a system, which corporations profited from extraction, and whether pledged adaptation funds actually reached a specific community. By embedding these records in a decentralized ledger, we ensure that institutional memory remains active even as political administrations change. Cryptographic provenance replaces the fragile promises of institutions with an undeniable record of action and obligation. Human administrators cannot manually calculate the complex relationship between colonial debt, shifting climate risks, and local health burdens across decades. We use smart contracts to enable programmable reciprocity, turning moral obligations into executable code. In the allocation layer, an algorithm detects risk in the underlying data. It identifies where historical extraction leaves communities exposed to modern shocks. While traditional markets price this risk and withdraw, a reparative system routes capital toward interventions that reduce it. For example, if a carbon market monetizes land stewardship, smart contracts can automatically route a portion of that value to the local communities, preserving the landscape, bypassing traditional bureaucratic friction. This logic seeks a Nash equilibrium, a stable configuration where the incentives, obligations, and protections are designed so that no actor improves their position by defecting from the repair. The allocation layer moves justice away from adversarial legal maneuvers and toward a silent, equilibrium-seeking system of routing value. For individuals, climate displacement often leads to a loss of personhood. When disasters destroy physical records, a person faces administrative death alongside losing their home. Digital identity can serve as reparative infrastructure when it is designed for substrate independence, the ability for governance and personhood to persist even when physical institutions collapse. Ukraine's digital government ecosystem provides a modern case study showing how identity, records, and public services can remain functional during wartime and mass displacement. By using decentralized identifiers and verifiable credentials, a refugee can carry their medical history, land claims, and educational records in a digital wallet that is not dependent on a single government servers. This substrate ensures that the moving individual remains legible to the allocation layer, allowing them to access support and maintain their legal standing across borders. Digital identity provides the continuity layer that prevents human beings from becoming invisible to the global systems that govern their survival. Without strict limits, a planetary reparative architecture risks being captured and weaponized as a tool for technocratic surveillance. To prevent this, the architecture must include a non-negotiable safeguard: score separability. This rule prevents a specific vulnerability from collapsing into a totalizing metric of human worth. A community's climate exposure may entitle them to adaptation support, but it cannot be used by a bank to deny them financial services. Different domains of life require different data, different rights, and different appeal mechanisms. Maintaining these boundaries is what prevents a ledger of repair from becoming a ledger of exclusion. Constitutional firewalls and human override rights are the necessary limits that distinguish reparative infrastructure from a system of algorithmic domination. The completed architecture functions as a unified system, routing corrective capital through a tiered stack of memory and allocation. In this model, public data identifies the need, blockchain secures the record, AI calculates the response, identity maintains the person, and law provides the limits. This system serves as a civilizational optimization strategy. It releases the intelligence, creativity, and resilience currently trapped beneath inherited structural loads. By building these systems today, we demonstrate a capacity for reciprocity that may determine our own place in a future governed by more capable machine intelligences. Proving that we can recognize the sovereignty of those whose futures we have historically controlled is how we qualify for our own continued agency. At its most refined level, repair is integrated into the transactional layer of a city. It manifests as lower financing costs, restored ecosystems, and stable housing through the very systems that already govern our daily lives. Justice should not have to scream forever in the political arena. At its highest level, it becomes the silent, coherent equilibrium of a mathematically honest world.